Hello everybody, it's May the 13th, 2013. My name is Amanda Ellis of amandaellis.co.uk and Facebook page Angelic Celestial Colours, where if you join that I update most days and we can be connected in that way as well. I channel Archangel Metatron and I also teach people how to heal with his energy as well as write, and I also am a colour therapist. You can see the beautiful bottles behind me. What I'm going to be talking about and channeling today via Metatron is I'd like to do some work with regard to the shadow side of ourselves and how to integrate that so that we'll become happier, more balanced people going forward. And this feels like it's a really important subject at the moment. And lots of other teachers out there are talking about the shadow side of ourselves and of humanity at the moment. And it feels as though it's something we really have to face together. And of course, there's been many great writers over the years that have brought this subject to the consciousness of people. In particular, Debbie Ford's great work, and she sadly passed this year. And it feels as though we really need to pick up where she left off. And for some of us, this may be a first attempt at looking at our shadow side, and for others, you may have been trying to integrate it for many years. But it feels as though Archangel Metatron is here at the moment wanting to help us with this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go straight into a channeling, and we'll see what he has to say today. Before doing that, actually, I did pick some cards. You know, I work with the Colour Mirrors Oracle cards, and we've got these three that came up today. First one, again, another dragon energy, the black dragon this time, talks about light in the darkness, which is very appropriate when looking at shadow work. We have got the turquoise water elemental, which talks about say what you feel, which is really reconfirming that now is the time to talk about this. And then we have the clear angel, the white angel. And of course, in any work with regard to shadow, we have to look at the dark and we have to look at the light. So we've got the perfect balance there. And we've got the communication card, which really feels as though Metatron has something to say on this for us today. And I can feel him, I can feel his energy buzzing at my crown, just sort of waiting to come in already. And I have already tuned in and asked for protection for all of us. And healing, this is also a healing transmission as you listen to my words, and we'll just see what we get. So I'm just going to, as I always do, just using the tuning fork just to heighten the vibration around us. For those of you that are into tuning fork therapy, this is the 528 frequency, which also talks about DNA repair in the physical body. I'm spraying something called Black Diamond, which I had specially made for me, which as I'm using it today feels very, very appropriate for Metatron in terms of speaking about the shadow side of our being. So let's see what we get. Well, good morning and greetings to all of you that are watching this. Archangel Metatron, I speak before you today and want to talk about the subject of the shadow side of your being. And it's interesting that Amanda has sprayed a black diamond, but also used that tuning fork which has the frequency 528, which is about DNA repair. Because often within our bodies there is a ancestral and karmic link going on that is stored within the DNA, and this can be both good characteristics and also maybe negative shadow characteristics that a whole family or a whole race or a whole culture can also hold as well. So when we talk about shadow work and cleansing our shadow, we have to actually go beyond our own individual stuff as well. So that's the first thing that Metatron is saying today, which is something I haven't fully integrated myself yet, which is the thought that wherever we are within the world, whichever country we live in, whichever class we come from, whichever caste we come from, there is a shadow that exists within that segment of society that also needs to be cleansed at this time. And so as a group we can ask for help with wherever we have come from with regard to our own family, but also with regard to our own country, our own race, our own religion, whatever it is that you feel that defines you or has defined you up to this point in time, whatever you have grown up with, there will be a shadow within that particular group or collective that you have been part of. So the first thing that I would like you to do, Metatron is saying here, is to think about that. Think about the collective that you come from and what the shadow side of that is. For those of you that have come through via traditional, conventional, religious groups, there is a shadow that is coming up now to be cleansed, and that is clearer in some religions than others. Certainly within Christianity and within the Catholic Church, and increasingly within the Church of England, within other parts of the Christian faith, we can clearly see the shadow side coming up to be exposed and to be looked at and to be healed. And we can also see it now starting to happen in other religions as well. It feels as though Metatron is saying that this is different. We can ask for healing here for the shadow side of the collective, and that is something that we all individually have to do. But if we take it into a personal level, there are two different things going on here. The personal level is different, and he wants you to now be thinking about yourself and your own physical consciousness, who you are as a person. And what is being said here, and is something many of you will already have read about, is the fact that obviously we are all multifaceted. We all have within ourselves the good and the bad. And what has happened, or has been the story of our civilization up to this point in time, is that we've always wanted to put the shadow side of ourselves onto other people. So we judge other people all the time. We judge the person who we view as greedy or selfish, the person who is difficult or obnoxious, the person who is hateful, the person who is vengeful. And I'd like you to think about, Metatron would like you to think about people in your life that particularly push your buttons in a negative sense. We will always have somebody in our life that where we look at their characteristics, or we look at something within their personality and we really, really dislike it. We really view it as something that is alien to us, something that is not right. And usually, apart from the most extreme examples that are out there, but usually there is something within that other person that we have within us. And the reason it irritates us so much is that actually there is a shadow aspect of ourselves that we can see in the other person. And so we put our shadow onto the other person. We don't want to acknowledge that actually exists within us, whatever that is, whether it's greed, lust, hatred, envy, whatever the seven deadly sins, isn't there? But there's many more than that as well. Whatever the negative attributes are that we put onto other people, but we don't want to acknowledge in ourselves. And at the moment, it feels as though on the world stage, increasingly we are seeing this shadow side of humanity coming out in very, very extreme examples. Most of us are fundamentally live our lives in a good way and don't seek out to harm anybody and don't have the heart of a murderer or a rapist within ourselves. But at some level, we have within ourselves the seeds of vengeance and the seeds of revenge. to name two that probably will strike a chord with many people watching this. And what we have to do with regard to trying to integrate these aspects of ourselves that we don't particularly like is, rather than just pushing them onto other people, is to actually see them as part of ourselves and to try to come to terms with that and to also accept them. It feels strongly as though at a personal individual level, it's not that we're necessarily asked to heal them, because they are a part of us that isn't necessarily going to go away. We live in a world which is made up in colour terms of black and white. We live in a universe of duality, of good and of bad, and or good and negative, or positive and negative. Those are better words to use, positive and negative. And this is the way that the world has always been. And because we are part of the world, we are part of that wider consciousness, we have within ourselves this positive and this negative aspect to our personalities as well. And so therefore it isn't ever going to be a case in the foreseeable future anyway. It may change going forward a few generations when the ascension process really flowers, but at the moment in 2013 we are still living in this duality, this process, this climate of duality, and so we still have that within ourselves as well. So we need to come to terms with those aspects of ourselves that we don't particularly like, and every single person has these aspects. Every single person normally has buried them, or they have been made to feel inappropriate or something that we shouldn't feel, and often this can go back to childhood stuff. Certainly there are people watching this, Metatron is saying, who are watching in different cultures, and so therefore again we come back to the cultural thing. Certainly within the UK there is the thing about don't get too big for your own boots, don't get too showy, don't get too full of yourself. So there's this thing about keeping yourself quite small in some respects. But in other cultures this is different. So what can we do with the shadow side of ourselves? We have to basically acknowledge it. We have to realise that it is part of who we are. And it's a bit like what I'm being shown as a naughty child. It's a child that misbehaves because it isn't necessarily getting attention. And so therefore the worst thing you can do with a child, a naughty child that isn't getting attention, is just to completely ignore it. Because what will usually happen is the child's behaviour will get more and more extreme. And so therefore you have to acknowledge and you have to give it attention. Attention is one of the big words here with shadow work. We have to acknowledge and give attention to those sides of ourselves that we don't particularly like. Those sides of ourselves that we don't particularly want the wider world to see. Those aspects of ourselves we don't even want our friends to see. We might not want our partners to see. We don't even want to see. So what happens is we squash them down. We like to think that we are only a good person, that we only have good positive traits. And of course this isn't the case basically. It is not the case. And so what we do is we dampen these negative feelings down. And by doing that, they come out in abusive ways, and this is in terms of ourself, it's self-abuse basically. One of the big things that strikes me in our world at the moment, certainly in the Western world, is this the number of people that are basically eating too much or eating too less. There's a big thing about food, and food is the one thing that where we can dampen down this shadow side of ourselves. Whether it's we're feeling bored, whether we're feeling angry, anger's a big one, whether we're feeling frustrated, whatever it is, it's almost like we use food as a drug in a way to actually squash down those feelings that we don't particularly want to acknowledge, to squash down what needs healing in our lives basically. And of course it isn't just food, it can be alcohol. There are many different ways in which we can squash down these negative sides of ourselves. Another very common way that it can come out as well is in depression. I'm not saying that everyone that is depressed that this is the reason. There is a chemical imbalance in the brain in a lot of people who are depressed, but certainly in some people this melancholy, extreme melancholy, and leading into depression can be a result of the fact that we haven't fully integrated and listened to all parts of who we are. It doesn't mean we have to act on our shadow side. It just means that we have to acknowledge that it is there and that it is part of us. I want at this moment to spray the clear diamond spray, which is the opposite of the dark black spray that I sprayed at the beginning. Let's just see what Metatron has to say here. I'm just going to tune in. And if we acknowledge the darkness within ourselves, within all of ourselves, it actually leads to freedom. It actually produces the reverse of what mentally at a human level we think is going to happen. We think that by giving energy to the negative, and that can just be an acknowledging that it is present, that somehow it is going to grow. But the power of light and the power of goodness, the power of love, is always, always stronger than the power of darkness and negativity. And really what happens is that when we acknowledge and we give attention to, and I'm feeling as though Metatron's like tapping us on the shoulders, because it often feels like it sits here. It's almost like this little naughty child or little monkey on our shoulders that just needs attention from time to time. And once we do that, and we just say, oh yes, you're back again. You're my, you're the fear that I hold within my body. You're the sense of inadequacy that I hold within my body. You are the anger that I hold within my body. You are the, I was going to use the word poison that I hold within my body. We can have poisonous words to other people or poisonous thoughts. Just by literally, it's almost like acknowledging it and then just seeing it for what it is, which is actually something pretty inadequate. It's something that compared to the light within us is nowhere near as powerful as we think it is. We actually give it power by squashing it down. By squashing it down, it almost becomes something that is too dreadful to even look at. If I acknowledge that, my goodness, what will happen? What will become of me? But actually Metatron is saying quite the reverse happens. And what actually happens is that it gives room for the light to grow, but also for balance to be achieved within our bodies. Because all it is really with shadow work is when we haven't acknowledged it, it is this imbalance where we're just focusing on the light to the detriment of our shadow side. And you can do that, he's saying, for a short period of time. But over months and over years, what tends to happen is by squashing it down and refusing to look at it, it's a bit like what I'm being shown, it's a bit like a jack-in-the-box. And the harder you push it down, eventually that puppet is going to spring up. And what will happen is it will spring up and it will emerge at times when it's least appropriate. And so this is what happens when we basically lash out in anger, or we behave in a way where we're maybe quite ashamed of ourselves. And it's usually never about the big things, it's usually about the small things. And that's because we've just squashed down these feelings within ourselves, this shadow side of our being. And if we'd only acknowledged it and seen it just as, that little puppet on our shoulder that from time to time we just have to almost pat and say, oh yeah, there, you're an aspect of who I am. You're not particularly one of my favourite aspects of who I am, but you are part of who I am. But because we haven't done that, it grows bigger in stature. So that's what I'm being shown, that often these outlets, these explosions of anger, and I'm using anger because it's a human emotion that we can all relate to. Everybody has this. And it comes out in the most inappropriate times. It's like the volcano that blows. And it's never about the big thing usually. It's about all the little things that have been boxed up. So that is definitely a message there, that don't fear the shadow. There's nothing to fear in it. It is simply another aspect of who you are. And you are made up of all the colours of the rainbow, and you're made up of the colours of black and white as well. So and as Metatron said, this first card that I picked, Light in the Darkness, this is about even within the shadow. I don't know if you can actually see this on the on the video, but there are these speckles of light. So we just have to allow the light to grow. But the worst thing we can do is just ignore our shadow side. That, I feel, is what I'm going to say for today on this subject. There probably are going to be other videos on this, and I'm definitely going to be writing about the shadow side as well. So there will be more to come, but that feels like it's the message for today. Just want to tune in once more, if I can, please, just for any final message. I'm just being reminded here that the time is now to look at this. And I'm also being, or Metatron is reminding me of that beautiful saying of Jesus's, which is, those without sin cast the first stone. And in a way, what he was trying to say there is the fact that we all have a degree of, whether you want to call it sin, because sin tends to be a word that is associated with traditional church a lot of the time, and a lot of people have a problem with that word, but those without negativity, let's put it that way, within themselves, be the first to cast the stone of the sinner, of the person that we see in our midst that we don't particularly like. And there is nobody at the moment at this earth, other than maybe a few living saints or angels, that don't have a degree of the shadow side within them. It's part of being human. And so therefore, rather than putting our energy into others out there in the world, and there are really big examples at the moment where we can see the shadow operating hugely, rather than just putting it all out there onto them, that, oh, you know, they are a freak of nature, they are evil, they are this, they are that. Forget about all that. You know, justice will take its course. There's a law of karma at the end of the day. We don't have to worry about what anybody else has done. It'll be taken care of by the spiritual realms in its own time, in the way that it's supposed to. But we have to be working on ourselves, and we have to be working on our own shadow side. And the first step, and this is the first step, is acknowledgement, and it's giving it attention. And that does not mean that it has to start acting out. It means that it's literally like, I want you to imagine it on your shoulder. That's where I'm feeling it. It's like these little naughty children on your shoulder. Just give them a bit of attention, and they recede into the background again for a little while, until they want to be acknowledged yet again. And then it just gives you more freedom to get on with your light work. So on that note, let's pull a final card, and we'll leave it at there for today. Any questions with regard to anything that I've said here, please email me, amanda.ellis@tiscali.co.uk, or you can just leave a message on the YouTube page. That's what it's there for. We've got an orange card. Interesting, actually. This one is this card here. It's related to the sacral chakra, and the sacral chakra is, for those of you that have done chakra work, is also related to our centre of sexuality. It's where our reproductive organs are, so it links into creativity, but it also links into sexuality. And orange, as we know, is a colour that's very much associated with Archangel Metatron. You can see a bit of orange behind me in the picture here. And it's the colour that I always link into when attuning people to his energy. And the fact that we've got the word sexuality here, actually that's quite important, I think, when we're looking at the shadow side of ourselves and of humanity. If we look at it firstly in terms of society, what Metatron is saying here is that we are seeing such an explosion of the shadow side of sexuality. I can only speak from a UK perspective here, but I know, and Metatron is saying that it's happening worldwide, that more and more people are being exposed who have been sexual predators or rapists, and obviously there's the awful child abuse of children that has gone on uncovered for many, many years. It's going on underneath, our noses, as it were. And in a way, this perverted sexual flow is a reflection of sometimes our own beliefs around sexuality. And the message on this card actually, where's it gone? Here we go. It actually says your body is the gift. And it's trying to say at an individual level, let's leave all the people we see out there who've been doing terrible things from a sexual perspective. Let's leave that to one side. As I say, Metatron is saying karma will take care of these people. You know, the spiritual realms watch on, and often they watch on with horror, you know, at what mankind does to each other. But you have to view this from a soul perspective and know that there is karma involved in any situation where somebody has hurt another person. And so again, let's not put our own thoughts too much onto these people, because in a way that gives it energy as well. Let's just look at ourselves. Let's look at our own sexuality. And the main thing here is to really view sexuality as something that again is an inherent part of who we are. And I think it's often one of the main drivers at a personal level, which people either think it's not necessarily squashing it down, but it's something that often we're brought up to believe it's wrong, or it should only be, I don't know, done in certain ways or at certain times, or you know, whatever your belief system is, whatever you've grown up with. But the whole point is to actually see it as a part of a healthy, loving relationship, and just to view it as something that's actually a gift. It's become, the whole thing about sexuality seems to have become rather twisted at the moment. And Metatron is saying this has been exacerbated by the internet, you know, and by the rise in online pornography. We have a generation of children growing up who are seeing things that no other generation have seen online, and who are almost viewing that what they're seeing as normal, and often it isn't normal what they're viewing from a sexual perspective. And so therefore we have to claim back, we have to look at our own sexuality and view it as something that can be healthy, life-sustaining, and is just again a good part of being human. So yeah, that again, may talk more about that another time. So didn't expect to be going there with that, but actually it does make perfect sense that, you know, when we're looking at the shadow side of our being, it's saying don't view what effectively is God's gift in terms of sexuality as something that is twisted and perverted, because it's becoming portrayed that way, certainly in many, many online sites. So we need to claim back the beauty and the goodness of that. Okay, so hopefully that's given you stuff to think about. I shall see you soon. Thank you very much for listening. Bye for now.